Hello crafted shutter watchers, welcome to another fantastic video today. And believe it or not, I'm a little tired because I'm going to post another video later today. It's just a video version of the black box user guide. I'm going to do my best to section it out for you so you can watch sections that you need to. But I read through the entire user guide. It's over an hour long. And I'll try to section that out so people can read sections that they need to. And if you are just joining Black Box, you need to watch the whole video. So now, today's subjects, before I dive into that, I want to thank everyone for being involved in the community tab. I asked some questions on there of the direction that I'm going to steer my channel. And so this channel is not going to be a gear review channel. It's going to be more of a gear use channel, and specifically how to shoot amazing stock video. But that also entails amazing B-roll, which also entails to good client work. And so I will build out the channel. I will also in 2020 throw out some more photography guidelines. I'm shooting another Grubhub photo shoot today. And so I'm always doing photography gigs as well. And photography earns me, thousands of dollars per year. I don't advertise it or talk about it as much. You can see in my community tab, I post some of the pictures I take on family vacation. Sometimes I post commercial work as well. Now, today's subject matter is subscribe to my channel. No, just kidding, it's not the but if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. Today's subject matter is cameras and their uses. In other words, different cameras, different purposes, different uses related to stock video. I see a lot of people, a lot of you are considering camera purchases, and if you're considering a camera purchase or you have a certain camera and you need to know where its strengths and weaknesses are, I'm going to help you a little bit today understanding your camera. The first camera I want to talk about, or really the first category, is the All-in-One camera. This is a Sony RX10 II. It has a zoom range from 24 to 200, so it's a really good zoom range. It also has a built-in ND filter, and it's a 1-inch sensor, and it's also weather sealed. What is a camera like this good for? Is it good for stock? I get that asked a lot. Is this camera good for stock? Yeah, pretty much any camera is good for stock if you know its strengths and its weaknesses. I use this camera for sports. I use it so I can get zoomed in close. It's weather sealed, so if it gets muddy or dirty, I don't panic over it as much. I use this for medium light, not low light. I don't use this camera in the dark. The sensor on this camera is not big enough to shoot really good low light footage. Sunset's fine, right? At the peak part of sunset, it's fine. Sunrise, same thing. Peak part of sunrise when that sun actually comes up over the horizon. But street photography, street scenes, you can do it, but it takes a lot more post-processing, a lot more reducing noise and using filters, which muddies the image. So it's not its strong suit. I don't use it for that, okay? This is my sports camera. This is my run and gun. This is off the back of motorboats when people are water skiing, or I want to go on the ski slope and I want to be able to zoom in because it has a built-in ND filter. It has the aperture ring set here. It can be clickless as well. It's quick to use and it produces a great image for S-Log2. It shoots 4K. The strength of this, it shoots up to 240 frames a second. A little tiny bit of post-processing and it looks really good in HD. It shoots 4K at 30, but it does a really stellar job at 120 frames a second as well. It also has an end shutter point. What that means is as I'm filming action, as the action happens, I then hit the buffer and that's where the shot ends. So I don't have to try to catch it. I just let it happen, hit the button, and then it goes backwards and does the 240 frames a second backwards, so you never miss an action shot. That's a really key feature to get really stellar footage. Sorry about the commercial on my fireplace here. Anyway, Didn't do that before, but I hope you're enjoying the train commercial. It's over in just a minute here. So that is the strength of this camera. I'm gonna fix this. Hang on a second. All right, back to my scheduled fireplace. So that is what this camera is good for. It's what I use it for. And I had someone ask me just the other day, what kind of camera do you use? I said, I use all kinds of cameras. In fact, I'm not even a name brand snob. I just want something that's going to work for me. What don't I like about this camera? Well, you can't change the lens, so there's not as much creativity. Shallow depth of field is nil to none. I mean, you can get some, but it's not amazing by any means. What else I don't like? Low light, like I said, it doesn't work. For that cinematic, beautiful quality, depends on what I'm shooting, this isn't the tool. To capture sports, action, to have the endpoint trigger, run and gun, this is fantastic, okay? So that's this kind of camera, 1-inch sensor. I have a couple of 1-inch sensor cameras. They're good. They're great for overall video cameras. They're good for documenting events as long as they're not super low light events. And they're good for that. Great reach, great easy to use when you need it. Don't have to fuss about changing lenses when you're in an environment that you just want to get the shot and get some amazing footage. Fantastic choice. The next one I'm going to talk about is the phone. This is an iPhone 8. It does shoot 4K 60p. I probably will get the iPhone 11 Pro. It looks pretty sweet with the different lenses on the back. But in general, what I'm going to say about a phone, it goes across any kind of phone you have. I don't care if it's a Google Pixel, Huawei, an iPhone, I don't care. In general, if it's a fairly newer phone within the last couple years, it's going to do a decent job at video. Now, what I've noticed in watching iPhone video, the HDR video, I've watched a lot on YouTube, is it looks a little plasticky to me. It looks really good in certain scenarios. Some nature shots can look really good. Some city shots can look really nice with the HDR. For people, sometimes the lighting tends to make it look okay. Sometimes it makes it look just like plastic figures. And I like my image to have a little more granular feel and a little more, I call it tactile feel to it. And the iPhone does not deliver that. The iPhone is very similar in shallow depth of field to the 1-inch sensor. This is bigger. This is still better in low light to some degree. But the algorithms that they have on these phones now, the image processing that they're doing and the computation behind the phone actually puts it on par. In some ways, the new iPhone surpasses a 1-inch sensor. So then it comes down to what's it good for? Well, it's really good because it's the camera that you have on you all the time. So it's good editorial camera. It's fantastic for that. And when you learn how to use it and shoot stock, the same principles apply whether you're using your iPhone or a $20,000 RED camera. Subject's going to matter, lighting's going to matter, all that's going to matter. This is not a low light beast, and if you try to clean this footage up in post after shooting at night on the street, it's not going to look great. It just isn't. So it's not a shallow depth of field monster, so you're not going to get that cinematic feel with this. It's a good lifestyle camera. Let's just say you're at the beach for a day and you want to get some angles, some different things with your kids playing on the beach. It's a bright sunny day. The HDR mode on your camera works really well, especially on the new one. And the lighting's, pretty strong, so you don't have to worry about shadows or, too much noise in your image. And then on that case, use your phone. Use your phone to grab city shots, building shots, that kind of thing it works great for. And so I would recommend you learn how to use the camera, the app, the phone. I recommend using an app like Filmic Pro where you can control the quality of footage. The bottom thing you need to know how to do if you're shooting with stock video on your phone is adjust the exposure manually, because you whip these phones around and the lighting changes and the the clip just looks absolutely horrible. So I've seen a lot of footage that shot with the phones that look fantastic. I've seen a lot of poor footage. And that has to do with the settings on the camera, like I said, not shooting in manual mode, how you're filming, you know, oh good, Uncle Ted's walking by, you know, oh that's great, you know, it's much different when you're shooting for commercial purposes that, you know, you have to every little move, and then you're going to have to stabilize it in post, probably most likely, to get exactly the smooth shot that you need. It does a really good job no matter what you're using. It probably does a great job, but just know its limitations, and it's not a low light beast by any means, okay? So good to decent lighting. If you have good post-processing skills, you can push it a little bit further. Other than that, keep it in good lighting, and make sure your subject matter that you're shooting is what matters most and that you're doing that well. Now I'm going to move to the DSLR. Now, I am shooting this on a full frame camera. This is a micro 4/3 camera. So the sensor on this is bigger than this, and it's a little bit bigger than this. In low light, these two are pretty close. This one's newer. It actually does better in low light than this one. This is an old EM1 camera. It doesn't do fantastic in low light. If I upgrade this to a newer version, it will do better, but it doesn't do well. Why is this a good camera? Well, this camera has in-body image stabilization, is one of the best ones on the market when it came out. There is better now. The GH5, the G9, fantastic cameras. They're the same sensor size as this one. So let's just talk about that. We have IBIS, which is really, really good for micro 4/3. We can change lenses. The lenses are usually a little bit smaller. This gives you a little bit more creativity when shooting video. You can get shallower depth of field with micro 4/3. In fact, you can get really shallow depth of field with micro 4/3 at a f.95, 0.95 lens. Usually it's going to be manual focus, but you can get really good shallow depth of field. I have a 1.7 aperture that gives me a nice shallow depth of field, good separation. It's good to use handheld if you're careful, if your technique is good. It does really well. I love the colors of this camera. I've always loved Olympus colors. I've always loved Canon colors. I also love my Sony colors. Just takes a little bit more work, but I've got it down to where I'm happy with it as well. So, how do I use this camera? Well, this is a little bit more cinematic because I can control the depth of field. It's a little bit better in low light than my camera or my 1-inch sensor camera. It has great IBIS, so it's still a good little B-roll machine. I use it more for photos now than video. I've hardly ever used this for video since I bought my Sony a7 III and with the other cameras that I have. Okay, so this is comparable to a GH5 sensor-wise, and we all know GH5 is decent in low light, but it's not a monster in low light. So same thing applies. You can get an amazing cinematic image out of this, out of a GH5, out of a G9. It's not going to hold you back. Being able to change lenses opens up a whole nother world for amazing cinematic quality, from wide angle to zoom in shots to compressing your background, whatever you prefer. These little cameras, DSLRs, do great. I'm going to move in to talk about my full frame camera, my Sony a7 III. And this is an interesting concept here, folks, because the landscape for cameras are just changing so fast. In reality, the phone can replace the 1-inch sensor, and in reality, in a lot of shots, the phone can do just as good as a micro 4/3, if not better. And in reality, my phone can match my Sony a7 III on certain shots, and in certain shots, for a dynamic range, it can surpass my Sony a7 III. I still think the a7 III image looks better, is more organic, and I like it better, but asking the general person which one looks better, they're going to pick the phone most of the time. That's just a fact. So why have a full frame camera? Okay, I went through a phone, a 1-inch sensor, a micro 4/3. Now I'm talking to you about my Sony a7 III, which is filming me now. Why have a full frame camera? Depth of field control is number one for me. I have a 1.4 aperture lens. It's not something you can do in post to represent a nice shallow depth of field to make it look organic. You can make it look fake, and it will look fake. And along with the depth of field control, I want low light monster, and that's my A7 III. It's a low light monster, so if I'm going to go out at night shooting, if I'm going to film in candlelight, or if I'm going to film a campfire scenario, if I'm going to do any of that, I am grabbing my Sony A7 III hands down. It's a beautiful image in low light. It's just fantastic to work with. And so I have my A7 III for the cinematic shot as well as the low light shot. It's easier for me to get the shallow depth of field, get that nice cinematic look and feel that I like with my A7 III than it is with my phone. So therefore, I own both. Most of you people have a phone, but I own both along with other cameras. So a lot of the time for stock video, I am shooting with my Sony A7 III most of the time, but not all the time. That's why I have choices on what jobs I'm called to and what stock I'm shooting for the day. So this is why it's good to have different camera and different lenses. Again, the Sony A7 III's lenses you can change on there. You can get some good wide angle, which I'm in the market for, a new wide angle for the A7 III. I don't have a wide angle yet. So if you have any good suggestions, list that below. You can get nice wide angle on the full frame, and you get, again, the depth of field control. You're going to always have better depth of field control with a full frame camera and better low light than you are with the camera or Micro Four Thirds. It's just going to be better, easier. That does not mean you can't get amazing images with any of the cameras I talked about or other cameras. But you need to understand that now that the cameras have all gotten so good and so close on quality, you have to start thinking, how do I want my image to look, and what camera is going to give me that look? And how do I want if you're shooting action GoPro, you're not worried about depth of field. You want everything in focus, okay? So you just have to start thinking, how do I want my image to look, and what camera is going to give me that look? What do I want to shoot, and why? So I hope you found this useful. If you haven't subscribed, do so. Like I said before, I'm going to end the video here. I've rambled on long enough, but I hope you got some value out of this, and we will see you in the next video.